who is also coached in those terms.
I was being a little...
Good morning to our listening and watching audience here at WRWK 93.9 FM, the Work FM, licensed to Midlothian, Virginia, serving the greater Richmond area and beyond with the power of the internet. Yes, it is another exciting edition of Richmond Business Babes this morning with our lovely host, the enlightening Lisa Linnell. I'm your producer, Sarah Louise, off camera, but I'm waving to you, those of you watching the live this morning. And Lisa will tell us all about our exciting episode that we have planned. And we've got, as always, two call-in guests that will be joining us shortly here. For those of you that are in the Metro Richmond area, boy, is it cold out there this morning. But it's warm here in the studio, and we're always warmed up. Well, now, shush. We're always warmed up and revved up and ready to go because you find the most interesting people.
Thank you.
So we have two amazing guests that are calling in, two very diverse artisans that are going to tell us about how they're using their art backgrounds to start their businesses and these exciting, interesting crafts that they are doing, very diverse things.
Very, very diverse and very exciting. And thank you, Sarah Louise, as always, the sassy Sarah Louise.
Sass.
My producer. And good morning and welcome to Richmond Business Babes. Here on Richmond Business Babes, you will get your weekly dose of celebrating successful women all over the RVA. You'll get to meet and learn from women who have made it in their own businesses and women who have made it in their corporate careers. Women who are doing what they love and loving what they do. And I am your host, Lisa Linnell, to facilitate the conversation. And today on Richmond Business Babes, we are going to learn how two lovely ladies, two artisans, started their businesses and are making money, as I said, doing what they love. First up, we will meet Erin McRoberts of All Snap, and All is AWL.
And that is so clever.
Yes, that's a tool for leather making, and she is a leather artisan. And then at the bottom of the hour, we'll get to meet Kathy Vaughn of Tracery 157. And I met Kathy. I didn't get to meet Erin, but I met Kathy at the recent craft and design show that was held in the Richmond, downtown Richmond, at the Main Street Station. And that was held at Main Street Station the weekend before Thanksgiving. And I am telling, have you ever had the opportunity to go to that, Sarah Louise?
I have not.
This is, if you're thinking, oh, crafts show, smash show, whatever, that doesn't make sense.
Level.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there are items there for thousands and thousands of dollars and worth every penny. There's jewelry artisans. There are metal workers, which, Kathy Vaughn is a metal worker, and I had the opportunity to meet her. There are leather goods artisans such as Erin. I didn't meet her at the show, but we'll get to talk to her shortly. Jewelry, basket weaving, wearables. They call them wearables. It could be anything from. I met a lady who's out of Charles City, Charles City County, who makes lamb's wool. And cashmere and everything.
Very cool.
Like blankets. It's just, you just walk away being awe-inspired and also feeling so humble, like, gee, I'm happy if I can draw a stick figure on a piece of paper. I mean, but it's all incremental. I was thinking about that over the weekend and in the last couple of days, how everything is incremental and everything is just taking that next baby step.
Right.
So that's going to be my motto for the new year.
Baby steps.
Baby steps, incremental.
I think that's a great one because so many times we set those New Year's resolutions way too high of a bar out of the gate. And then if you don't succeed quickly enough, you tell yourself, oh, I can't do anything.
Right.
And by February, you've given up.
Exactly. February. Try like January 15th. I give it 1 week. No. But, that is something that I'm going to kind of like devote to my process for, excelling in different areas.
Yeah.
So yeah, but that's for a whole nother show.
Cool.
But yeah, let's talk about that craft and design show. It is in the, putting Sarah Louise on the spot. How many years do you think they've been holding this craft and design show?
August 20.
54.
Wow.
And you know,
54 years?
Yeah, and
Oh, my word.
next week we're going to have the lady who coordinated the whole show, which I mean,
Okay.
I am
Wow.
sure, and I'm going to ask her this, but her name is Shelby. I bet she spends the entire year coordinating.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm
it
sure.
was a feat. And I had never been to the Main Street Station before. Have you been there?
I have not.
It's something to see. It's beautiful.
All right, I'm going to have to plan for this then.
Yeah, so 54 years, and I think the craft and design show, and by the way, that is presented and sponsored by the Visual Arts Center of Richmond. Did that used to be called the Hand Workshop? I'm going to ask her that when
You
she
have to
comes
ask.
because I think
know.
it was called the Hand Workshop.
Okay.
But
So tell me this again so I can put it in a comment.
Craft
It's
and Design Show 54th year would
Craft
just
and
happened. It was the weekend before Thanksgiving, which is perfect timing. And it's sponsored by the Visual Arts Center of Richmond, which is a nonprofit, of course. Now, the Visual Arts Center of Richmond has 140 teaching artists. So if you want to learn something having to do with handcrafts, visual arts, some kind of, become some kind of artisan, pottery, metalworking, fabric, jewelry, you can learn it there.
That's so cool.
If you can't learn it there, I don't think it exists. So just create your own then. But the tickets were $10, so they were a little pricey. But guess what happened? I went with my daughter, Jean Linnell, and guess what happened to us when we walked in?
Did you win something?
No.
Oh.
Somebody said, "Hey, do you need tickets?" And we're like, "Yeah."
Oh.
So we saved $20.
Oh, hey.
And we got our tickets for free, which was so nice. So shout out to that lovely
Wow.
lady who gave us the tickets.
Oh, my goodness.
That was really cool. So that put us off to a good start.
So now the people that show there, are they all professional? Are there students as well?
I don't know.
I guess that's something to ask next week.
Yeah, you could ask Shelby that next week. Shelby Howick. That's her last
Okay.
name, Howick. And I mean, I was just blown away.
54 years. I'd be curious to know too, like in the 54 years, what type of changes
Mhm.
she has seen in the
Well,
types of goods.
she's a very young
the
woman,
level
so I don't
of
think she's seen
art
too
or
many
the-
changes.
Oh.
Well, young to me anyway. But I have to say that they estimated there were 6,000 attendants, such
That's
as myself
awesome.
and my daughter. Yeah.
See, I've got high schoolers, so I'm completely immersed in their world right
Sure.
now. So anything going on in the city, I feel like I have no clue.
Right. It's
don't
an
pay
effort to
attention.
get there since we are in Midlothian, but if you can just get psyched up about it, which I did, and my
Right.
daughter lives in Churchill,
Aha.
so we met.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So
That's awesome.
it was really quite a show. There was one booth that had hats, and they were, the Kentucky Derby
oh, wow.
kind of extravaganza hats. And there
like
was
what
one.
you wear to a British wedding or something.
Exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Fascinator.
Yeah.
A fascinator.
And
Ooh.
I think I took the card, but I think it was done by a man. And since this is Richmond Business Babes, we rarely have gentlemen on the
Yes.
show, but every now and then we do.
Once in a blue moon.
So I might get him on. I can't remember his name, but there was one hat, Sarah Louise, that was, picture a disc the size of like a wedding album or bigger, right?
Okay.
All covered with peacock feathers,
Oh.
just artistically matted down in a beautiful design.
Mm.
I forget what the brim, that was the brim. I forget what the crown or
Right.
whatever you call the part that goes on your head. It all goes on
The
your
top.
head, but the top was, but who cared? I mean, I was like, and he had that on the back wall of his booth.
Wow. Oh,
And I was
just
just
caught
blown-
everybody's eye, I bet.
I loved it. I
Mhm.
mean, I don't know that I'd wear it, but I mean,
It's
it
like a
was
piece of art.
amazing.
It's
Yes,
art.
it was art. It was
a
truly art.
haberdasher.
A-
He's a haberdasher.
That's right. My husband told me an interesting fact years ago. He said that, and I guess it's true because it came from my husband. It must be true. But Dave,
You're so trusting.
yes, I am gullible.
No, stop.
Anyway, he told me that after President Kennedy, John F. Kennedy,
Yes,
JFK, was elected in the 60s,
Mhm.
the hat business went downhill because he didn't wear a hat. And up to that point, men wore
Presidents
hats.
and
Men went
presidents
nowhere,
especially, sure. Sure.
without hats.
That could
But
be.
he, you know, he had a beautiful head of hair anyway. Who needs to cover
right,
that up? But,
right.
you know, he didn't wear a hat. And, you know, after that, the hat business went down, which may or may be not be true.
It could be.
But
Could be.
while we're on the subject of hats, I'm going to switch gears to leather.
Yes.
And I'm going to ask Erin if she makes leather hats, which I don't think she does. I didn't see that on her website.
Okay.
But coming up in just a minute or two here will be Erin McRoberts.
Yes.
And her story is an interesting one. She used to be involved with selling promotional items, promotional products, you know, a pen with, you know, a company's logo on it, or, you know, a plastic bottle with a logo, whatever. And she, the more and more she thought about the environment and recycling and all of that, she said, I've got to get out of this.
Right.
So she actually adopted an earlier love, which was her mom had taught her to sew. Now, she had never sewn leather, but she, you know, she wanted to dabble in sewing leather, which I think would be extremely the hardest of all.
It is. I can tell you from doing some costume work.
In leather?
Well, a little bit. Because
leather?
Well, no, actual leather, because my daughter who dances with the point shoes, those shoes are made out of wood. Oh, here we go.
Erin's coming on the line. So, yeah.
You have to have special needles.
So, as Erin comes on the line,
Oh, I missed her.
There she is. As Erin comes on the line, I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Erin McRoberts' amazing journey. So, you know, the more she started recycling and shopping vintage and handmade quality products, and the more she had more of an environmental heart that was growing bigger and bigger every day, she thought, well, I can go back to my sewing skills that my mom taught me back when I was a young girl. So, and I love this. She said to me, she didn't really ever sew leather, but she said, leather was a completely different animal, pun intended.
Yes, right.
So she started sewing leather. She started experimenting. She did leather working tutorials on YouTube. She had her first product. It was the Tom Tom tote. And people were just stopping her as she was shopping and out and about saying, where did you get that? So she started taking orders. So her business grew very organically. You know, that was when really All Snap was born. And she said in 2013, she took the leap of faith. She quit her day job, and she actually is now in a building downtown on Broad Street, which is the All Snap shop. And I guess her studio is back there as well. So, Erin McRoberts, we are so very excited to have you on Richmond Business Babes. Welcome.
Thank you. Hi, Lisa. Good morning.
Good morning. I am so happy.
We have our little applause machine. There we go. Yay. Good morning.
I am so very happy to talk with you today and to learn about your journey from being, you know, selling plastic tchotchkes to, you know, becoming more environmentally conscious, and now creating beautiful works of art. Your products are works of art. I've gone on your website, and you know, doing what you love and making money loving what you do. So walk us through that transformation.
Oh man. Well, like you started to touch on, I was working in a job where it was in the promotional products industry. So I was selling, you know, products with logos on it for trade shows and stuff like that. And I loved everybody I worked with. It was a great family, but it was just like wearing at my soul, you know, like seeing a warehouse full of like all this like cheap plastic stuff that I knew was like, people would use it for a day or if that, and then like toss it, you know?
Yeah.
So I just kept having these like images of like this giant landfill full of like stress balls with like, you know, some corporation's logo on it.
Love
you know,
that.
over the years, I just kind of I didn't even realize I was doing it, but I was like becoming like more, like definitely more of a hardcore recycler and like, you know, just looking at labels when I'm buying things, like where's it made? What's it made out of? Like, does the brand care at all about, you know, being eco-friendly or, you know, just consumerism in general? And so it was definitely an underpinning, and I guess what I started doing, even though like I started doing it just because I loved making stuff with my hands, and I wasn't doing that at my job anymore, just because, you know, it was a 9 to 5 at a computer. So I didn't have that creative outlet, and I went to art school and I got a degree in painting, and you know, that didn't really take me where I wanted to go. So I knew I had to do something with my hands. So I just started by making a bag for myself. I was looking for something out there that didn't exist. I can't really pinpoint what it was. I just wasn't seeing something that was really nice that I could afford, that, you know, had all the pockets where I wanted them and stuff. So I just made my first bag. A friend gave me some leather scrap, and I made one on my sewing machine, my home sewing machine, which was a nightmare because home sewing machines don't sew leather very well. But yeah, I just made one, and then I had a bunch of people, like, over the next, I don't know, a couple months or so, say, "Oh, how'd you buy? Where'd you get it?" And I would tell them I made it, and then
isn't that the best compliment of all? Because they don't know that you made it. Right. So it's a sincere, true compliment. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah, it felt really good.
That's excellent. Yeah. That's excellent. Well, you know, I've looked at your website. Unfortunately, I didn't see your booth at the show because I did go to the show, and I attended kind of late, and then I ran out of time. I wanted to find your booth and find you, but I'm sorry I wasn't able to. But on your website, I love the simplicity of the line. It's not a lot of doodads and gewgaws and all that crazy stuff. It's like the product speaks for itself. And I can't say, I can't go on and on because I'll get slapped on the wrist here because we're a nonprofit and it sounds like I'm promoting you, but you do make beautiful, beautiful items. And
thank you.
As you were talking about like stress balls winding up in the landfill and everything, I was thinking of myself, and I have to say, I'm very ashamed that when I go to these trade shows, I'm like, oh, this is free. I'm going to take this. Oh, that is free. I'm your worst or best customer, however you would want to look at it. So, but
I can't lie. I still have a couple things like random like USB chargers and stuff that have like really come in handy when traveling.
Right,
so
right.
I can't totally knock the business. But there's definitely a lot of extra.
That's true. That's true. And I'm going to think twice. You know, you're making me more aware of my negative habits. So thank you. That's not why I brought you on though. So, but so you made your first bag, and Sarah Louise and I, my producer and I were talking, you know, before you came on about, and I've sewn a little bit, you know, back in grade school, and she sews her kids' costumes and things, but leather is so hard. Don't you need special, like I wouldn't think a normal sewing machine would even have needles that would go through the leather, would it?
Exactly. Yeah, and I learned the hard way. Like I started by trying to sew it on my home machine, and I was like breaking needles left and right, and so then I just started doing a lot of research online and figured, oh wait, I need a heavy duty machine. So yeah, they're just industrial sewing machines.
Industrial. Okay.
They're just like a really heavier weight, so they can hold a bigger needle, and they can really sew through it. So I have a couple of those in my workshop now.
Excellent. Did you buy them used? I would imagine they're extremely expensive.
Yeah, they're a couple $1,000s a piece for sure. Yeah.
Okay. So your first one, you bought it. You said you're all in. If you're buying a $2,000-$3,000 sewing machine, you knew this was your path.
Yeah. Well, I found it used. I think the first one came from somebody on Craigslist. Yeah, local. So it was, you know, maybe about $1,000, but still, it's a lot of money. And yes, but I knew that I couldn't really do anything with that, you know, without that machine.
Right.
So,
and where did you first start to buy your leather? And are you sourcing your materials differently now?
You know, I am. Yes and no. I started doing a lot of research online. I originally started by buying some leather on eBay because I didn't know anything about it. So I had to teach myself everything.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to start from the ground up and like just kind of experiment. So I bought different types of leather on eBay from sellers that would sell in small quantities but usually leather you have to buy by the hide. So you have to buy a whole cow at a time, either a whole cow or a half cow.
Oh.
So you're talking a couple $100 just for one type of leather in one color. So,
right.
And there are just as many types of leather out there as there are fabrics, you know?
Right.
So it's very expensive to get started in. So yeah, I started by just kind of experimenting on eBay and finding like different suppliers, and I realized that really wasn't where I wanted to go. So I landed on maybe like two or three suppliers in the U.S. That I did a lot of research on and talked to and made sure that they're working with tanneries, whether it's domestic or international, that they have close relationships with and that they know who their employees are and they're treated well, and you know they're taking care of processes that are involved in tanning so that there isn't like toxic chemicals running off into somewhere in Bangladesh, and just making sure that they're doing what they can,
right.
And so that gave me peace of mind. Now I know that I'm not going to change the world, and I'm not trying to. In the end, like it's still an animal. It's still, these animals are produced for food for us to consume. So it's still a product. I can't say that I'm 100% eco-friendly, but I just try to say, like, I'm trying to baby step into it,
I'm just talking about baby steps.
One little piece at a time, and to like make myself feel better about just taking into consideration like where things are made and where they come from, where they come from.
And Erin, I'm so glad you said baby steps, because I feel like that's divine providence, because we were just talking about that. And I sat down here with Sarah Louise and I said, going forward this, next year, 2019, I want to do things incrementally. And then she said baby steps. So it is true. I mean, you get overwhelmed if you look at the big picture and go, oh my gosh, how can I ever get there? But like you said, you're doing it, step by step as best you can. You can't control everything, but the things you can control, you are controlling.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Like I still buy plastic water bottles sometimes. Sometimes you gotta, you know what I mean? Like,
well, that's it. The show is over now. I'm sorry. That's it. You're banned.
Game over.
Banned by the babes. No. So but that's fantastic. So walk us through the point where you said leap of faith. I'm going all in, doing the $1,000 sewing machine, making your first bag, getting those orders. Then what happened next?
Yeah. So then I got to a point where it was taking up most of my spare time. And when I would take off like a holiday for work, I would spend it working on those orders that I was getting through Etsy, which is where I originally started selling.
Right.
And so I was just kind of like producing as the orders came in. And it definitely wasn't at a point where I was like, oh man, I'm so overwhelmed with orders. Like I got to decide and like quit my job and do this. But it was just at a mental point for me where I was like, okay, I'm 30 years old. I'm not married yet and I don't have kids yet. It's now or never, like I felt like if I'm gonna take the leap and try to do something, like I should do it now, because I'm not happy in my job. I don't have a clear career path with it. And I know that this is something I enjoy, and either I, take the chance or don't and regret it. And I knew that at that point, like the regret would eat me more alive than trying and failing.
Right. Well, good for you. Good for you that you did that.
Yeah. It was hard. It was a really hard decision. Sure. I read a lot of self-help books to get me to that point.
That's excellent. I like them too. I usually get halfway through and then I get distracted. But anyway, Steve Harvey wrote a good one.
Yes.
Did you like his? It's a blue cover. I don't remember what it's. He probably wrote like 5 of them, but there's one that's blue cover that I like.
I could give you lists of like my favorites. I've got tons.
All right. Now, so to walk us through. Okay, now you're making money. At what point did you break even where you could support yourself and you quit and you're supporting yourself? What year would you say that was?
Oh man, well that depends on the year, to be honest.
Oh, okay, good point.
2000. So I quit in 2013. I started putting all my effort into it.
Yeah.
But I achieved it all because I was working part-time with a photographer who was helping me, or I was helping him part-time do some stuff, which helped pay my mortgage because that was stressing me out. So I wanted to make sure I at least had the basics covered.
Sure.
But then about a year later, so I would say 2014, 2015 was a really good year, or years, I guess we could say, maybe 16 months or so. It was before all this election madness. People were still spending money. The economy was in a good place. And yeah, I was featured. Martha Stewart does this thing called or American Made, I think it's called. American Made, yeah. And so she does, I'm not sure if she's doing it anymore, but it's an awards program that she does every year. And you can nominate yourself or somebody else can nominate you to win this award, which is like, I think you win like 20 grand and you win notoriety through her and you get to meet her and go to New York. And, I guess it's a pretty big deal. And I was a finalist that year, which was awesome.
Yes, awesome. Did you nominate yourself or did somebody?
Yeah.
Hey.
No, I submitted, I just kind of wrote about what I was doing and I submitted it and submitted photos and then it's up to yourself to promote it and to spread the word to get people to vote for you. So with the help of my mom and my friends and stuff, we kind of spread the word to get people to vote. And then a panel of judges also votes. So yeah, so you make it high enough on your own, and then the panel judges as well, and then you become a finalist. So
wow,
at least made it through some of the panelists, which was awesome. So that was some good publicity, and also I won a Made in Virginia award for Virginia Living Magazine that year too.
Excellent. Well, congratulations. Well, you deserve both those awards because of your work. I could spend probably the next entire hour talking to you. I mean, you're vivacious, you're exciting, you're creative, but unfortunately I can't. So we're running out of time here. So let me ask you this, for the women or men who are listening or viewing, who think to themselves, okay, so now she's making things in her home, in her basement or whatever. Well, how did you take the leap to go to the store on Broad Street, and how expensive was that?
That was a baby step, another baby step. So I moved out of doing it in my home to a studio down in Plant Zero in Manchester, where a bunch of artists live.
Right.
And I shared a space there. It was like $75 a month, and I was scared to death to do it, but I did. And then I just slowly grew from there over the last 4 years or so. I moved to a slightly bigger place every couple of years. And I just left a studio in the back of Scott's Addition because I found this storefront on Broad Street, which was like a perfect deal. It was a great price. The landlords are super flexible, really nice guys. They like what I'm doing. And they let me do like a year-to-year lease here just to try it out. And I needed more space. And so the money was like a little bit more expensive. So, I mean, it was a no-brainer to just go ahead and take the jump, even though it's a lot of money. Cleaning the place up, painting the outside, putting signage up, there's definitely some upfront costs. So I'm really trying hard this holiday to get my name out there so people know I'm here, so they can come do some holiday shopping. Yes. Well, I'm sure that your name got out there with the show. What was your response, and what was that your first craft and design show? Last year was the first.
Oh, last year was your first.
This was the second, and it's great. I mean, it's one of my favorite shows that I do throughout the country. I don't do too many, but it's one of my favorites, and not just because it's Richmond, but because it's a really fun venue. The people there are great. Richmonders are awesome, but it was also, good publicity, so I could tell people now, I have a storefront on Broad Street.
Yes.
Right across from the Sowers building. You should stop by. And so I've definitely had a few people since then stop by, or at least call and say, hey, I want to come by, I want to order something, so
beautiful.
It was definitely a good good exposure for sure.
Absolutely, Erin. One last question, and then I'm going to let you go here. So going forward, well, let me back up. Are you the only artisan making your bags, or are other people making them under your direction?
I've got 2 part-time assistants,
Okay.
2 VCU fashion student grads,
That's
which
perfect.
has been a godsend having the school here. Because
Right.
I find people who are like already know how to use industrial machines, which is fantastic.
Yes.
So I've had them seasonally, pretty much, like at the last quarter of the year when it gets really crazy busy. I have them come in and help so that I can make inventory, so I can go to these shows throughout the next couple months and travel and sell my stuff. So yeah, I've had two part-timers that help me. Definitely a learning curve there, getting them up to speed on how to make things, how to make certain patterns and whatnot. So yeah, I'm really lucky to have them. I hope that next year, my goal is that I'll be able to afford to have one of them on full time.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's what I was wondering, because as you scale up, there's only so many hours in the day for you to make every bag. So, then
and as I scale up, everything else does too, which means all the paperwork and all the talking to customers.
That's right. That's right. That's right. Well, wonderful. Before we let you go, I just want, first of all, say thank you so much. But before we let you go, what advice would you give to some of the Richmond business babes out there who have yet to make that leap of faith, or maybe they've made a little baby step leap of faith, but they're not all in? Like you went from quitting your job to being all in. So AWL, all in. Because your business is all snap, right? Okay. So what advice would you give?
It's funny you say I went all in, but I actually consider myself pretty risk adverse. I have a hard time spending money. I have a hard time making big decisions like that. So I feel like that I sort of baby stepped into it, because yes, I quit my day job, but I also made sure that I had some income lined up to pay the necessities. Like I said, I kind of, for that year in between, had a little part-time gig to help me, spend more time on my business and, kind of a diving board, I guess, or a jumping board. But so I think that is my advice that I give a lot of people. Like, it doesn't have to be all in. It doesn't just like with being eco-friendly, like we were just talking about, like with recycling, like you don't have to go from it's not black and white. Like you can take baby steps to do it. As long as you're on a path and you don't give up that goal or that hope, and stay optimistic. That's a really hard one, to stay optimistic even when times are really tough. That's the best advice I can give, is you don't have to, give up everything to start over and start from scratch.
Right. Not all at once, anyway.
Dip your toes.
Well, wonderful. That's excellent advice. And Erin McRoberts, tell our listeners and viewers how they can get in touch with you, how they can find your store, your address, all that good stuff.
Sure. The first step, I would say, would be to hop on the internet and go to allsnap.com, which is AWL,
right.
SNAP, a little pun there on leatherworking tools, allsnap.com. And there you can see all of our products and get our address. Also, good old-fashioned Google. If you type in allsnap in Google, we should pop right up on the maps, and it'll drag you right to our store at Broad and Meadow in the Fan. And yeah, feel free to, anybody listening, stop by. We're here almost every single day working, making product in the shop, and we have a little retail space in the front, so come in and chat with us. Wonderful.
Well, listen, Erin McRoberts, it has been an absolute pleasure to have you on Richmond
You too, Lisa.
Business Babes. Absolutely. Much success to you. God bless you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too. Happy holidays.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. And what an honor that was to have guest Erin McRoberts, a Richmond, Virginia entrepreneur, a lady who is making money doing what she loves, making leather goods, and she's loving what she does. Now, next up, we have Kathy Vaughn. I did have the pleasure of meeting Kathy at the Craft and Design Show that was held at Main Street Station just the weekend before Thanksgiving. And wow, what an incredible artist she is, artisan. She does metalworking, and her color palette is every color I love, which is like copper tones and like those green patinas and, you know, the aged, burnished, like all, I mean, I love those colors.
That sounds amazing, right?
Today I'm wearing lavender, so you're saying, no, you don't. But yes, I do. I love those colors. I mean, like the green, I like the gold and greens and and I don't know what the names of these, you know, colors, she can tell me, but, and the blues and the turquoise, I love all that. And she has developed, well, let me tell you a little bit more about her before she comes on. So she had a graphic design degree from the University of South Carolina. So she spent 25 years doing graphic design.
Wow. Fantastic.
Then she started working as a coppersmith. Okay. She created an art form. It's a brand new art form where she manipulates elements of nature with copper. And I saw that at her booth because she had a big, I'm going to say picture. It wasn't a picture, but it was copper. But I think it had hydrangea leaves in it. I think that's what she said. It's like embedded in it to give it that. It was just breathtaking. And she has... she did a solo exhibit at the Richmond Science Museum in February through May of 16, called Lasting Impressions. And then she was selected as best in category at the Art Scientifique exhibit in Fresno, California. So she's all over the country. Then she came back and she did the Lewis Ginter Botanical Gardens. She was part of their Wild Art a journey off canvas in 2017.
Very
so
cool.
She's all over the country. Her work is magnificent. Kathy Vaughn, we are so honored to have you here at Richmond Business Babes. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you for having me today.
Thank you for coming on. And you know, when I saw your work, and my daughter was with me, and you met Jean, we were just blown away. It was just so, I mean, I hate to use the word unique because it's, you know, it's overused, but it really was. Tell us about your process.
Well, my process for getting images on copper is something that is, I mean, just generally when you want to get color on copper, that process is called patination. So you're trying to oxidize the copper so that the color and it's basically copper's version of rust. And the way you get different colors is by using different chemicals to react with the copper to make the different turquoise and blues and greens. And a very simple example is, you know, a very simple household acid is white vinegar. Which is also acetic acid, and that will react with copper and give you that green that you were talking about. You can add ammonia to copper, and that will bring out some of the blues. And then there are lots of different things that you can do. The unique part about my process is that I use leaves in my process. So I work with live leaves directly into acid copper that has been exposed to acid. So the copper is still wet with acid, and I work with do a composition with live leaves, and then let that just sort of marinate on the sheet for anywhere from 3 to 10 days, and let the oxidation just happen on the sheet. And that's how I get my images.
And that is a process that you have developed, correct?
Well, patina on copper, you know, we're talking about rust. So the specific way that I do it is, I guess, a little unique to me. But it's certainly, copper is something that reacts and oxidizes. So I've just sort of taken something that naturally occurs and made it into a specific process that's just sort of how I paint with copper. I use the chemistry that already exists in nature, and I just sort of manipulate it by using leaves and just however I arrange them to make my specific images.
Well, they are beautiful, beautiful works of art. How did you like doing the show? Was this the first year that you did it?
I have been doing the Craft and Design show since 2015.
Uh-huh.
And I have been, it's a jury show, so you apply every year, and they have different jurors every year, so you don't necessarily want, it's not a show that once you get in, you're always in, so you apply, you submit new images every year, and it's a very competitive show, and they have really kind of ramped up their reach to be not just a local show, but more of a national, certainly
yes.
a mid-Atlantic show. But they're really since they've come into the to the train station, that new venue just sort of really transformed the show last year.
Yeah,
and it's really grown a lot.
Oh, it blew me away. I hadn't been to one. No, I take that back. I think was this originally the hand workshop? Is that what it was originally?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
So I had been to one years and years ago, I think at RIR. Do you know if it was over there? It was
not sure if it was at the Raceway. I know that it had been at the convention center for a number of years. And then it moved to the Science Museum for several years.
Yeah, it must have been the convention center then, but yes. Oh, it was just such a great show. Now, walk us through your career path, making the transition, the leap of faith, so to speak, from earning your money as a graphic designer to earning your money as an artist.
That is a really big change, because instead of going to work every day and collecting a paycheck every 2 to 3 weeks, which is pretty dependable income. When you're working as a artisan or a fine artist, your work can be seasonal. You have to have certain time to create your work, and then you find a show or you find a gallery that will carry your work, and that. So watching cash flow is a very something that I pay a lot of attention to, and it's really a whole different way of thinking about work when you're a one-person company.
Sure. Your deadlines are self-created, based on maybe a show or a gallery.
To a certain extent, and they're also dependent on, like, for instance, if I'm going to a craft show, that will often be my deadline.
Uh-huh.
Or if I am applying to have my work at a gallery, that might be my deadline. I also apply for residencies. So, for instance, when I was doing the Lewis Ginter installation, they put out a request for a proposal, and I followed their guidelines, wrote a proposal, and then they have a selection process. And they, so if your proposal met their guidelines, and it was interesting to them, then they would select you along with 10 other artists to do this proposal. So it's a fairly competitive thing to do something like that, and I certainly use a lot of my skills as a graphic designer when I'm working on my website or doing proposals and things like that. So I try to use all of the skills I've acquired over my lifetime.
That's wonderful. And I'm sure it's a fine line for any artist or any artisan where you're balancing the love of the art and you know, I'm going to say fine tuning it. That's not really the right word, but just, oh, you know, one little more touch here or there versus, hey, this has got to be, we have a show. I've got to pack up and get to my show. So, you know, you're always on that tight wire, a tightrope of, you know, it's not perfect. It can be perfect if I have more time versus I've got this deadline.
Well, I have my criteria for if something is ready to go to a show or not. I have to love it if I'm going to sign my name to the back of it. I have to be willing to. I have to look at something and say, would I hang this in my house? Would I have this candelabra in my house?
Right.
So that's kind of my criteria. I'm not going to sign my name to something that I am not kind of in love with, and maybe a little sad if it gets sold.
Right. Well, and
so I try to have really high standards for myself, so that I can feel really confident when I'm selling my work.
Right. And you mentioned the candelabra. That was one thing my daughter and I just loved. That was right out in the front of your booth, and it had that beautiful swirl to it. And I liked how you chose, I think it was blue candles. Like you didn't choose white candles, and that really complemented the copper, I thought. Was it blue or green? I can't remember, but it was like, it really made a difference. Kind of an aqua
green, I think.
Green, okay.
Yeah, copper is a really warm and friendly metal, and when I decided to sort of have that be my main material to work with, just its sort of friendliness and the way that it, for me at least, is easy to work with, was part of that decision. And I just love the sort of inherent warmth of the metal, and how it, you know, it'll age over time. It's very malleable. It's very, very friendly to work with.
That's great. Is it dangerous at all with the chemical processes?
With any kind of chemistry, you know, I mean, chemistry can be as simple as, you know, water and air. So you have to be really smart about how you work. I try to work outside when I'm working with acids as much as possible, so that there's plenty of ventilation. And I also wear a respirator and gloves and that sort of thing. So, which is one of the reasons I have struggled a little bit with. I've had a lot of people ask me if I teach classes, and the safety element of the way that I've developed my process has kind of kept me from teaching so far, but I'm working on that. So
yeah. Well, have you considered YouTube tutorials like our previous guest, Erin McRoberts of All Snaps? She's a leather artisan. She does that.
I'm familiar with her work.
Yeah, that's nice.
I have not done YouTube tutorials so far, but that would certainly be something. I have had the honor of both the Science Museum and Janie Kirby at Crossroads Art Center, who's one of the local galleries that carries my work. She came out with a videographer, and awesome. We did a couple of hours worth of demonstrations where I was talking about my process and showing that. So if you go to crossroadsartcenter.com, you can see some videos of my work that Jenny produced.
Excellent. And I believe Crossroads Art Center was just voted by the Richmond Times-Dispatch as the top art gallery in the metro area. I believe that they were number one. Was that correct?
I think that's correct.
Yeah, so very cool.
Jenny does a great job with marketing, and she's a really great person to work with.
That's fantastic. That's great. Now, I know my producer, Sarah Louise, has lots of questions, so I'm going to bring her on.
Hey, Kathy, I'm the one that took your call and got you on hold, ready for the show. So I do have a couple of questions I wanted to try to put on the air for our listeners and viewers on our Facebook Live, because I'm always fascinated with women who are in this particular space. I have a few friends back in the Rockbridge County area who are metal workers, metal smiths, if you will. And there's a lot of, there are small art galleries in Lexington, my hometown, that have found success, but they are men. artisans. And so I'm curious to know, as a woman artisan in metalworking, do you find you are a minority?
I would say that would be true. There are, when I first started doing craft shows, one of the questions I got was, is your husband a plumber? No, I don't have a husband, and no, this is all my work.
Gosh.
So there's a certain, especially on the more artisan side, there is a bit of an expectation that if you're working with metal, you must be a guy. And I seek to disprove that with the work that I do, and I will have to say that among other metalsmiths, there is I have not found a lot of discrimination against women. I think it's just more of a societal expectation that if you're working with metal, you're going to be a guy. So I'm part of the Central Virginia Blacksmith Guild, and there are men and women in that guild, and women are very welcome to participate in that, and they offer classes.
Good.
And it makes it very accessible, and they're very interested in broadening, breaking down those societal barriers and making blacksmithing and metalsmithing accessible to everyone.
Which it should be, and I'm very glad that you are helping to break that expectation, and that you are, and hopefully you're seeing a change.
One of the things that I do is I try to do at least 2 shows a year that involve demonstrations. And one of the ones I do is at the Waterford show, and that's in October, and part of their requirement is if you're going to be in the show, you demonstrate at least 50% of the time. And so I'm showing blacksmithing or coppersmithing to kids and to adults.
Oh, wow.
And I let people play with the metal, and usually have a craft, like a make and take thing that kids can take.
Cool.
So
that's very nice.
I consider part of my goal as a coppersmith and a metal artist is to, help keep that alive.
And do you see girls interested? Do you see young girls saying, hey, I want to do this?
And being able to hand any kid a hammer and say, and teach them how to use it and how to make something. It's just very exciting when you see their face when they were like, wow, I did that.
Right.
It's
That's
really
great.
That is fantastic. Wanted to ask you about Field Day of the Past in Goochland. That's very hands-on demonstrations. Have you ever gone to that?
I have not done that one. There are a lot of opportunities, and just kind of all over the country. And I really applaud that. There are RVA Makers has a day in September at the Science Museum where there are just a lot of demonstrations and things like that. So I'm always looking for new opportunities. So I'll have to check out the one in Goochland sometime.
That's great. I did have one more question for you, because I'm looking at your website, and your website is very well done. I love the photography, and I know you mentioned you had a photographer that you had worked with, and just the way it's laid out makes a lot of sense. I love that you use family tools that have been handed down. So was your father, you have his hammers, and you have your grandfather's anvil. Was anyone in the family into metalworking, or are these just tools they used for other things?
My grandfather was a farmer, and he did his metalworking had to do with I think in his day, you made your own tools because you lived in a rural area, and you couldn't, there wasn't a hardware store to run to get something. If something broke, you had to make it. Fixed it yourself right on site. My dad was not a farmer, but he was a fine crafts person. He spent his career as working for a Duke Power Company, and when he retired, he did marquetry, which is wood inlay. So he was much more of a woodworker, but he also welded and did a lot of sort of small, along the lines of what my grandfather did was, he he would make some of his own tools and that sort of thing. So I actually have his forge and all of the hammers and things that he had in his shop. And so when he passed away, I inherited his tools, which is a great way for me to keep him around with me every day.
That is beautiful.
I
Well,
love that.
I see that you were no stranger to, handwork and artisanry growing up. So that was, copper was in your blood, I guess, huh?
Certainly working with my hands was in my blood.
Yes,
And I'm just really happy that I've found a medium to work with that gives me a challenge, every day.
Yes, yes. Now, let's talk about the financial aspects, if you don't mind, of having this not only as your love, but as your business to obviously sustain you income-wise. Would you say that 50% of your revenue comes from shows and the rest from galleries, or is there a big online component to the revenue? How do you?
For my work, I have I would say probably around 20% of my work is sold online, which is maybe a little small for other people in the craft industry. I do a lot of direct sales and commission work. So it's contacts that I make through fine craft shows. So I get a lot of work when people see my work and want something especially made for themselves. So there's a certain component to that. I would say gallery sales probably are about 30%, 30 to 35%, and then the balance of it would be craft shows or referrals from craft shows.
And how often are you traveling to a craft show?
I was looking at my schedule, so I did 14 shows in 2018. I still have one more to go.
Okay.
And I travel from Rhinebeck, New York, to Baltimore, to Atlanta, to lots of shows in Virginia, Crozet, Norfolk, Richmond, of course, Waterford, and there's a show in Raleigh, North Carolina, the Carolina Designer Craftsman Guild that I participate in every year. And so I spend a good bit of time on the road or getting ready to be on the road.
That's more than averaging one a month, and I'm sure the majority is grouped more toward the holidays, obviously, than the beginning of the year.
Yeah, the fall of the year. So starting in September, October, November is my busiest time of the year, and I do probably half of my shows during that time. I try to take the summertime, July and August. I try to reserve for custom work and for also building up my inventory for the fall shows.
Right.
Because for my abstractions, for my fine art work, since I'm using live leaves, I get my best results using fresh leaves. So I have to carve out time to make work. And a lot of people who are in the craft industry can do a lot of that work in the wintertime. Mm-hmm. And so I'll do more of the things like making candelabra and things that aren't seasonal dependent when it's cold outside.
Right, right. Well, your work is absolutely beautiful. And Kathy Vaughn of Tracery 157, tell us how we can get in touch with you.
You can go to, I have two websites. I have tracery157.com, and I also have copperabstractions.com. So I try to keep my, I think it's helpful for customers who are looking either for my fine art or for my craft work to be able to look at it a little bit separately. And because it was getting a little overwhelming to try to have all of my work on one site. So I sort of, the two sites are linked together. So if you go to the top bar, you can cross-reference to either site. And I have sales online there. You can also find me in Richmond at 43rd Street Gallery and at Crossroads Gallery. And check for local shows. I have a list of events on my website, and you can find out where I'm going to be next there.
Well, Kathy Vaughn, it has been such a pleasure meeting you in person, obviously, and then having you on Richmond Business Babes. You do amazing work as a coppersmith, and you really sound like you know exactly what you're doing as a business babe as well.
Well, thank you so much. I think one of the things, if I had to say one thing to somebody going into the business is, while making is a really wonderful thing, if you don't market your work, if you don't spend at least as much time marketing your work as making your work, people aren't gonna be able to find you. So that's a really important aspect of being in this industry that sometimes people who aren't in the industry and aren't successful think, oh, I can just make something all day and take it and sell it. You really have to work very hard to get yourself out there.
Yes, true. That is excellent. That is excellent. Well, Kathy Vaughn, thank you again for coming on Richmond Business Babes. All the best to you. God bless, and Merry Christmas to you, Kathy.
Thank you, and thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Kathy. Now we do the applause. Thank you. That
was Kathy Vaughn of Tracery 157. She is an artist that I had the pleasure to meet at the Craft and Design Show a couple of weekends ago. And she is just one example, as well as Erin McRoberts, of, great Richmond business babes in the area. They are doing what they love as artists, and they are making money doing what they love. And who are these Richmond business babes? Well, we come in every size, every shape, every color, and every age. We are rocking it out in our small businesses that we own and breaking through those glass ceilings in the corporate and professional realm. And once again, thank you so much for listening. My name is Lisa Linnell, your host, and thank you, Sarah Louise, and we will see you next week on Richmond Business Babes.
Thank you so much for being with us today, and we're going to return you in just a moment to our regularly scheduled programming. You are watching and listening to WRWK 93.9 FM, the Work FM, licensed to Midlothian, Virginia. And we want to remind all of our listeners and viewers that we do have an ongoing fund drive for repair of our transmitter. We are in need of repair for our transmitter, as we are broadcasting at a lower wattage than we would like to be. And so with your help through the holiday season, we will be able to get that repair done sooner, so that we can reach more listeners and more viewers in the new year. Thank you so much for your ongoing support of independent radio, and we now return you to our in-progress broadcast. Thank you, thank you. And now, back to what is happening.
Holiday season, and Happy New Year. Thank you so much.